AV Week.
Performing scan
Week.
online.
This is AV Week. AV Week.
And welcome to another edition of AV Week, your source for news and information in the AV industry. I'm your host, George Tucker. Tim Albright is otherwise engaged this week. Welcome to the show. We've got a full-packed show today. Post-Infocom, 1 week, 2 weeks out. Is it 1 week out? It feels like a month already, doesn't it? Good Lord. Well, none of us who got sleep during that time there. Well, to join me to discuss a number of topics, some hot buttons, some technical, in order is one Victoria Ferrari. She is from Synergy CT. Hey, how are ya?
Great. Glad to be on the show today.
Yeah, it was good to see you at Infocom. And I have to say, you were about the fourth person who tells me I look taller on TV, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I have room to talk, you know.
Yes, well, it was one of the few advantages I had of you're the first person to say it that wasn't taller than me, so there you go. Also joining us, and I have no idea how tall he is Shannon Harvey from Aspect Unlimited, all the way over the pond in the UK. Good afternoon, sir?
Late afternoon. Yeah.
Late afternoon, there you go. Well, still good afternoon, there you go.
Yeah,
Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me on.
All right. Also is our good friend, she is Kelly Perkins. She is a marketing and communications manager for AVI Systems and co-host of the AV Social Show.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
And last but not least, of course, is Corey Moss. He is CEO of DC Smart AVIT. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, George, and I will admit that at Infocom I was half asleep on my feet for the first 2 days, but I recovered on the third, so it ended up being a great show nonetheless.
It was indeed a lot of fun, although, yes, I saw a lot of walking wounded on Wednesday afternoon, I have to say. There was people just flopping over like fish. It was quite amazing to watch. We had both Rave and Aviation had booths or little press rooms up on the second floor, and there were couches, and of course when there are couches and tired people and humming AC, what do you get? A lot of sleeping people. So it was quite interesting to watch. But before we get going, we do have a sponsor. It is Middle Atlantic. All right, Middle Atlantic has designed a technology pedestal to make your conference room installations much easier. TechPed series is a conference table support system for maximizing space and promoting cable and thermal management. There are loads of finishes to choose from, so you can match the color of your room if need be. There are also options like wire mold retractors and raceways. The TechPed series from Middle Atlantic do for conference tables what credenza racks did for credenzas. Check out more information on the TechPed pedestals from Middle Atlantic at middleatlantic.com/avnation-techped. Middle Atlantic, what great systems are built on. Thank you, Middle Atlantic. Cool. So, it's been an active week since Infocom. We had all of the technical stuff come out, all of the best and worst and the winners and the losers and the Microsoft desert, among other things, which was quite interesting to wander around. But one of the things that came out of it is a perennial craw in the throat of many people, which is the use of, for lack of a better term, booth babes. Our friend Leonard Susskind wrote a very interesting article that's gotten a lot of attention. You'll see it there up on the screen, about how it was not, we don't really like it, or many of us don't like it, and we feel that it's in a time when women are becoming more and more part of the AV industry in higher and more influential roles, that this is really disingenuous. The arguments go back and forth. Are we really being disingenuous? Are we being disingenuous by being disingenuous or accusing disingenuous? I'm not sure anymore, so I'm going to bring up some of the topic. We're going to start with Kelly. Kelly, you've been involved in some of these conversations online. Let's start there. What do you think of his article and what he's saying?
I mean, of course I agree with it. I just, between he and Penny, of course I think it's degrading and whatnot, but at the same time, I'm so sick of this topic. I'm a woman. I'm in AV, and every year this topic gets brought up, and it's just, I feel like it's overdone. I don't mean to be, I'm completely support women in AV on every aspect and, you know, every plane. Women in the industry have been some of the coolest, greatest people I've ever met. Corey Schaefer, Melissa Dillman, Don Mead, Aaron Bolton have been some amazing mentors to me, and it's just, this topic just keeps getting brought up, and I feel like putting it in the spotlight almost just brings up this topic again and again, and it's not, I mean, yes, it's degrading and annoying, but it's, what's different between that and women in a magazine and women in posters and women in movies? It's just like, you keep bringing it up, and it almost does the opposite effect of actually, of, you know, maybe if we just kind of left it alone, I don't know. I go back and forth on it because I really, like I said, you know, the women in our industry are some of the greatest people I've ever met. And do I think booth babes are, do I think it's annoying? Yes. Do I think it makes your company look, you know, crappy? Yes. But we all think that. You know what I mean? Leonard thinks that. I'm sure everybody on this panel does. I mean, it makes your company look bad. And if you want to make your company look bad and hire booth babes and be that company, then feel free. But you're putting a mark on your company, and that's it. And that's my opinion on it. Like I said, I feel like it's just a never-ending cog in the wheel where it's just, it never stops, and I don't think it's ever going to stop. And I don't know. I don't mean to go off on it. It's just
no, that's fine. But Victoria, Kelly brings up a good point: is that maybe we are giving it too much attention. Is the answer to simply ignore it and let those wither out, or do we have a more serious problem here that really does need attention?
I'm glad that Kelly stated it the way that she did, because I kind of feel, you know, a lot the same way. You know, it's kind of like when the media sensationalizes those killers that go out. You know, it's like that same kind of thing has come out, that, you know, it's like we're giving too much attention to something negative. And then also, you know, these companies, it's like they're marketing that way to get attention, obviously, and they're getting it. You know, I personally had never heard of Pure Link until the article came out about the booth babes. You know, for me, the way I look at it is, yeah, it's annoying, but I don't think that it's like completely, you know, oppressing me. You know, I think I mean, if I'm going to go to the booth and there's half-naked chicks there, if they're going to talk to me and they're going to be nice, okay, that's fine, whatever. It's uncomfortable a little bit, but I'm not going to say that I have to necessarily ban a manufacturer because they choose that type of marketing. Am I not going to sell Crestron to my clients because they had, you know, cow chicks guiding people to their bus? No, I mean, that would be a disservice to my clients. So, you know, I mean, I think that it's annoying. I'm sick of hearing about it. But at the same time, I do appreciate Leonard and other guys who bring it up and feel that, you know, they kind of want to protect us almost a little bit. So that's that.
Well, Corey, again, Victoria brings up something. Is what Leonard wrote, and I was active on the original blog post defending a lot of it against a number of people who were bringing up not only the ability of people to earn a living in that way, but, for lack of a better phrase, physical empowerment, about taking ownership of one's body and using it for what they want. Are we being over the top and trying to be the male defender in this, and perhaps we do need to take a step back?
Well, you know, first of all, the women in AV, I've been a supporter personally for a while. It's not a new thing for me. So again, I've supported the effort. I know many women in the industry, many good women, and you know, I can name names like Corey Schaefer, Jan Sandry, Gina Sansevero, Penny Sittler. There are many, many more. And as a matter of fact, Penny got involved as well, to which she wrote a blog in follow-up to Leonard's. And I have to say, with Penny jumping into this, it lends more credence, as far as I'm concerned, to the whole issue. Now, Leonard coming out and doing it at this time, you know, hey, as Victoria and Kelly are saying, okay, we're a little tired of hearing this, but I'm not tired of the fact that, women do still talk about the support from men in the industry. And how it may still be lacking. And now Leonard brings this to the forefront. And some of us are jumping in on it. I'm certainly jumping in on it. And actually, it's kind of becoming groundswell where we're concerned. And honestly, those aiding to the cause, Karen Smith also got into that LinkedIn discussion. Both of them went full force. So now you have women's perspectives to it, too. And they're upset, and there are other women upset about all of this. So certainly, like I said, I understand Victoria and Kelly, but my answer to that, George, is it's not just going to go away by itself. It'll continue. They'll continue doing it. Now, the images in the article, well, first Leonard in the dress, I mean, I'm scared to be in the same room with him at this point.
Well, I have to admit something, though. I said on his blog, and I'll say it again, it's the tall guys or the tall people who get all the advantages. You people can wear anything. See? Now, Leonard in a dress is fine. Me, I'm all boxy. It doesn't work. So if you can do it, rock it, I say. But still, not to sell product, I guess, or at least not to sell product you have nothing to do with.
No, I think the bald head really makes the statement. But the other image in the article is where the statement is really made. And somebody already brought up the company name, so, I can say it again, PureLink. And there's the image with a guy with a wide grin on his face, okay, with a beer in one hand, what looks like a candy bar in the other, and two booth babes standing there, in each arm. And you know what it almost signifies to me? It's like they're saying, hey, come to our booth, go see the products, that's fine, but come have a beer, see the booth babes, okay? And they are scantily clad, midriff exposed, and like I said, I love his grin in that. I mean, that's just priceless. Do I care to step in their booth at this point? Well, if I have a reason to, and the other thing is, I have many of these women, while I'm traveling by a booth, actually step outside and say, can I scan your badge? Now, if I'm not interested in the product, why do I want them scanning my badge? Because all I'm going to get is, email, worthless mail, which clogs up the mailbox and everything. So the practice essentially is eye candy, scan the badge. What more do they do? Not much. But here's the way I feel, and actually others have agreed with this. Why don't we take these women who, as you say, deserve to make a living, and they certainly do. I do not deny that at all. They are at the consumer shows, but for a cause, as far as I'm concerned. Infocom is different. You have industry professionals going to the show, and they have a targeted focus. If they see a booth babe, they want to come in, fine. Okay, they may attract them in to see something that they weren't aware of. But honestly, it works at the consumer shows. Look at the auto show. Look at the consumers are going to be drawn to it. Okay.
Well, let me bring in Shannon at the moment, because he and I've had some offline discussion about this. Shannon, you have, for lack of a better phrase, the international perspective on this, and whether you agree or not, I will mention that a number of associates that I've conversed with on some of these LinkedIn forums and in some of the blog, one in particular, a guy named Harold, who I'm very, very close with, basically admonished us for being the American PC, being overly concerned, and that this is nothing in Europe, and that everyone knows where their places are, not meaning keeping people in certain boxes, but that we do this and that it's okay. What is your perspective on viewing all of this? As said Corey, we do it in almost all of our shows, and there's a line between professional and not, or is there?
Well, interestingly, I think I've seen the most flagrant use of the booth babe mentality in marketing in Las Vegas, of all places. Even in places like in shows that I've done in New York or LA or Orlando, you don't see it nearly as much as you see it in Vegas. And I think it's part of the Vegas culture in some ways as well. From the European perspective, I was actually quite amazed at one point that I was receiving emails as part of a sales team for a manufacturer I was receiving emails directly from women who were targeting the manufacturers list before the show happened to advertise their services for trade shows well in advance of the show in Europe. And this was for ProLight. And interesting thing there was is that they were actually, while they were sending a fairly scantily clad picture to the sales team that essentially pops up like porn, they actually were trying to more market themselves for the language skills that they had to do translation for the German and Dutch and French and Spanish clientele that you might have on your booth. And that was what they were actually marketing, as well as their other assets. But from as far as the PC perspective, certainly Europeans don't necessarily aren't as conservative in some values as Americans, but at the same time, as far as American marketing goes, it's always been pretty risque and pushes the boundaries that sometimes even the Europeans may not be as risque about certain things or as PC about certain things, but they don't push the boundaries, I don't think, nearly as much, because in America you get more attention by pushing the boundaries, whereas in Europe it just kind of gets ignored if you push the boundaries.
Well, our Puritan upbringing, I guess, or Puritan origins have a lot to do with that. It's we're not supposed to be titillated about it, yet we are, so we have to have both sides of it. Which I guess poses the question, and I'm going to put this to Victoria first. Given everything that we've just talked about, and this sort of indecisiveness, maybe we're giving it too much attention, maybe we're fostering it by pointing it out, maybe it's our American PC, we are supposed to not like that kind of thing, yet we know we do kind of stuff. A lot of booths also, and I'll say this out loud, pandered to the World Cup crowd. We talked about booth babes getting, or booth beefcake in some cases, but very rare, wanting just to get your ID. Whether you go in the booth or not didn't matter, they wanted your scan. It's a whole numbers game. Everybody had the World Cup on. Why? It wasn't showing the high-quality 4K of a lot of it. It was to get the masses. Is this not really the same thing?
Yeah, and I don't know if it will ever stop because of human nature. I mean, it's cliche, but sex sells, and that's how it's always been. And unless, we completely change our nature, which is not going to happen, I think, marketing is just going to continue in that way. When I used to work for a manufacturer, and I've worked for a couple different manufacturers, and I always felt that it was better to get quality instead of quantity, because I worked for a small manufacturer, and that meant that I had to go through all of those leads, and it was like, do I really want 100 guys that just came to my booth to get a beer or watch the soccer game or see hot naked chicks? But that's just me. Different people have different ways of running their businesses. So,
well, I suppose it's all within context. Well, let's move on to something maybe perhaps a little more positive. Women organizations at the trade shows. One of them being Women in AV. There's another one, I believe, that met during InfoComm this year to address women in the industry's concerns. They gave out a number of awards this year, and we'd like to just mention some of them. I think there was, you can see it on screen here. Sorry, I was having trouble switching. Corey Schaefer from Listen. I don't have them all in front of me. I apologize.
Dan Sandry and
Yes.
Teresa Hahn.
Thank you very much. I had a list up here, and it disappeared on my computer. It's not liking all the bandwidth. But thank you. So there are organizations out there that are actually directed towards talking about these issues, but more about actually technology and women in the industry, right? Kelly, you've been involved in some of these organizations. Were you involved in the meeting of a bunch of people at InfoComm for another?
There was the Women in Technology breakfast. I couldn't make it to the Women in AV, the Women in AV party at Hard Rock because I had a prior dinner engagement, but.
Yeah, well, my point is asking that there are more organizations popping up, which is a good thing to address maybe segments of the industry, not just women in AV globally, but there are some organizations that work towards that. And I guess my bigger question is, part of the conversation we just had, some of the people would ask the question, why is there a WAVE but no need for a MAVE, a Men in AV award ceremony?
Well, I think think, I mean, I guess there could be, but I don't know. There seems to, at least when I started in the industry, there seemed to be so few of us. And it was kind of, and I had previously talked to Corey about this. Sometimes, okay, so I'm in marketing, so I'll get, okay, you're a woman in the AV industry, but you're in marketing, so it doesn't matter, But if you think about it, I mean, there's how many men in sales, you know what I mean? And they don't get, oh, he's just a guy in sales, it doesn't matter. So I guess my point is, I think it's great to have an outlet for women in this industry because it is so male dominated, and it's really nice to have somebody to pick up the phone and call where you don't feel intimidated, where you don't feel, like somebody's going to make fun of you or judge you because you don't know a certain technology, or if you want to just ask about things that are going on in the industry. And I think that's really, between mentoring and really guiding and helping, I think that's all the Women in AV is really trying to do, is educate, teach, and mentor other women in the industry. That's
Cool.
really the whole point of it.
No, I think that makes the valid point. Let's go on to something else that is sort of, I guess, controversial and can be confusing to the people outside the industry, sort of like seeing the sausage made sometimes. Recently, there was published in Engadget, a friends at Engadget, what ultra high definition really means. So with 4K, which is what this is part of, maybe not, that term has been thrown about in different parts of the industry to mean almost the same thing, but others say it's not the same thing. Shannon, I'm going to throw this to you because you deal in using 4K almost every day now as an live events, projection mapping. We'll give the people a little bit of an aspect of what you do. You work a lot with that projection mapping technology.
4K is nowhere near the resolutions that I typically deal in at this point.
Right. So let me ask you then, from that sense, and by the way, we're saying you're doing stuff that's just amazing, but it's not dealing with that technology moment. But to someone like you, who's both a professional and a consumer,
sure,
this is actually a confusing terminology. Do you understand what the difference between 4K and Ultra HD is?
I do, but I've written articles on 4K, so I understand the concepts, and I work in these pixel counts. I had a really funny occurrence where I went to a pop-up booth for Panasonic here in London, and had the amazing experience of walking in and hearing the guy who was giving the sales pitch to a bunch of punters, which is a term there. They pitched to these guys who were standing there that they were looking at the future, and it was 4000p. And I just wanted to stand there and go, actually, it has nothing to do with 4000, what you're showing them. 4000 doesn't appear as a number anywhere in the resolution count of what you're talking about. And let's not confuse people here. And I think that it is a really confusing thing for people to have to think about and understand, what was HD? With HD, suddenly we had 720, we had 1080i, 1080p. It's all these different terms. What is 3D? Is it active? Is it passive? It's just another set of terms in reality. I think Ultra HD and saying that it's 3840, 2160, 2160p is actually a lot more accurate than 4K. And I like Ultra HD as a term just as well as I like. I think it's a better way of describing it. And 2160p to me is much better. My issues with consumer 4K, to be honest, is more about the availability of content, the availability of broadcast bandwidth. They're saying something like 8% of the television market within the next 5 years, only less than 10%, more like 8%, will actually be 4K televisions. I think 4K is better than 3D was. 3D felt like a gimmick. 4K feels meaningful. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how the uptake of that is over time. Another key thing, though, with 4K to me is with HD. HD really started coming out in about '96. So now we're at 18 years lifespan of HD being part of our lives. Almost all of us have HD televisions. When HD came out, we had no definition of what was next. With 4K or UHD, we already know what's next. We've already seen 8K televisions in the industry. So as a defined kind of point, we already know as consumers what we're going to have to buy next. And I think that's a really interesting kind of consumer mentality thing is of the disposable nature of televisions. And you mentioned on one of your shows recently about the under $1,000 4K television. And to me, it's kind of it's an interesting state to think about people buying a 4K TV today as nearly a throwaway item because they might be buying an 8K in 2 years. Yeah, so anyway, those are some of my thoughts on UHD. So I had to jumped away a little bit there.
No, it's fine. But let me throw this to Kelly. You deal not only in the technology, but the marketing of the technology. And I kind of have this feeling that despite what Shannon is saying, and that there's very real reasons for the delineations between them and what's coming next, and that, we are sort of in this disposable technology era of, the next big thing's coming, you want it, although we tried that with 3D, and that's another issue entirely. Are we not confusing our consumers? Even our educated upper-level consumers are confused by this. How are you marketing it?
It is. People are so confused, and I have a great example. So my grandmother is turning 90 years old next month. Her tube TV went out about 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
This has been the biggest disaster in our family in years. So she orders a TV from Sears. It doesn't work. They don't install it for her, blah, blah, blah. My mom's friend is trying to convince my grandmother to get a 4K TV in the midst of all this. And I'm like, oh, my God. I'm like, and he's like, well, I'll set everything up. I'll do this. I'll do that. And I'm like, my 90-year-old grandma does not need a 4K TV. So I finally got that figured out, and then she's asking what kind of TV, and she's, losing her hearing a little bit, so then she got a sound bar, and the remotes don't work, and she's all over the place, and we literally got it figured out yesterday. So, now she has exactly what she needs, which is not 4K, but it's been a disaster. No, I guess the regular population of people, not just 90-year-olds, because my mom was confused, and honestly, when it first started coming out, I was confused. So, yes, I think the population is extremely confused about 4K. And I think I think eventually it's going to be like HD. People are going to recycle it. People are going to, when the price comes down, they'll probably order it maybe for their homes and whatnot. But I feel like that's a long ways out. And I think, just to, reinforce your point, yes, I think people are confused.
Well, and Corey, to Kelly's point, you and I offline had this short discussion about this, and my feeling was that we're doing this, the industry, whether that's manufacturers trying to look unique or have some kind of different angle to get themselves out of the clutter of advertising, but it almost feels like we're creating a false format war.
The first word I'm going to say, George, and it's very historic in the industry now, is buzz. Okay.
Well, have you seen any 4K glasses yet, or 4K? Because didn't we have that with HD with all the sunglasses and stuff?
No, I got rid of my 3D glasses, so I'm not
sure. No, but the HD glasses, the ones that see in HD at the beach.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh yeah. Yeah, I got them at B&H. But it's interesting though, and this has been talked for a while at this point about 4K. And, we talk about the actual definition. We talk about content. Is it available? Is it not readily available? I actually had a great email with one of my close associates in Russia. He's a display video wall expert. He works for Polymedia. And he sent me a real interesting email talking about the difference of 4K, Ultra HD, that there really is a difference, and the HD resolution, the Ultra HD resolution, and he says 4K is everything close to it. And And it's an interesting point that he's making. But you know, the way I feel is that 4K has come full force into the consumer market. I go to the Sony store last year. They're showing me the 4Ks. Go to Best Buy. They're showing you the 4Ks. Are they Ultra HD? Good question. But you know, it comes out as, yeah, we'll call it 4K. Let's all call it 4K. You know, and then somebody in the industry starts calling it Ultra HD, and then everybody's scratching their head like, but wasn't that 4K? You know, and then the end users get confused. So can anybody in this industry actually use the right terminology to describe what they're selling? You know, and to what Kelly's saying and to what Shannon's saying as well, there's a whole lot of confusion still at this point. So somebody has to unconfuse the market right now to where this is all going, as far as I'm concerned.
Can I interject something here, George, for 1 second?
Why, certainly.
My biggest concern at the moment for anybody who's going out and buying a consumer product in the Ultra HD or 4K side is really, there is nothing, unless they have a red camera and are doing a red player, or they're getting Netflix streaming on a 100 meg plus broadband connection. You know, the amount of content available for somebody, you know, just trying to upscale HD isn't doing very well. And with the number of TVs that actually exist with HDMI2, there's just not the delivery systems, even the internal chipsets on some of these televisions are stitching together multiple HD sources or two dual-link DVI. It's not clear, even on the high end of the professional side. Barco and Christie projectors, for example, you know, in our staging side of things, we're dealing with major problems in trying to combine video formats to be able to just output over distance this type of bandwidth that's required to push these pixels. And I think until that becomes a little more clear on the back end of what the technology is really about, all the marketing in the world is just hype. And it's not going to really settle until there's a solid standard on the playback content broadcast distribution side of things, which is the same problem that 3D had. You know, 3D now is being pulled from all the major sports broadcasts that used to do 3D broadcasts. They're pulling all of that because they just don't see the value. And I think the same thing in the 4K is going to have to play out for a while, as it did with HD. It had to play out for a while, and we didn't see HD broadcasts for many years after we actually had HD TVs around. And we still get 4:3 content that's SD shot, and still it still gets sent out that way. When I haven't had a TV that wasn't 16:9 in almost 10 years. You know, some tubes still exist, but.
Right.
But you're so right. I mean, when you're at Infocom, I mean, what is all the content you saw? Like flowers with dew on them, you know, grass waving. Like you're right. There's no content other than like National Geographic like cutouts.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't get me started on content at trade shows. That's a whole other subject.
Oh yes, someone like you.
Yeah,
that
don't
is.
get started.
Ooh, yes. Yes. Well, I mean, and not getting people started. Let's talk a little bit more about integration here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to pull it up. Microsoft was supposed to show up, and they didn't. And I'm not going to be here to talk about what they did or didn't do. There was a desert. It was a booth. It had the World Cup on. You could charge your stuff. Great. There's bunches of articles. Corey, you mentioned it on your Rave Pubs version. Leonard Steds, everybody had something about it. We were dubbing it the desert. But what came out of that, well, just on the heels of it, was Insteon starting to sell smart home kits and devices through Microsoft stores. This is from our friends at Electronic House. Okay, so our friends at Microsoft said they want to get into Infocom. They're making big things, and then they partner with, as we were just saying, what is 4K? Are we really talking about something real? This isn't really home automation now, is it? Or are we really just fooling ourselves? Corey, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this? And then we'll transition into the little wearable wrist pad thing that we have as a topic as well.
Well, and you know, it's interesting in terms of home automation, all of that. You know, I'm in Best Buy the other day. They're selling Nest. The Microsoft store is bringing in products like this to sell also. I'm in the Microsoft store the other day, bringing in my adware-laden PC, but that's another story. You know, it's interesting where this market is going and where it's going into as well. So this is going into the Microsoft environment. That's what they chose to do. Is that the best environment for them? Well, you know, the Microsoft Store has a lot of people who go into it. You know, I'll have to tell you about the solution itself. I'm not as aware of it as others might be. But you know, I think putting it in the Microsoft Store is pretty strategic. But what's interesting about the Microsoft Store is it's pretty limited in terms of its focus. So this kind of becomes, and here's my word, disruptive, I guess, in terms of what they do. But you know, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, I think they're doing the right thing with this, and you know, you're going to see a heck of a lot more of it.
Kelly, and I'll let everybody know that somehow Victoria's network got cut off, so we're missing her input on this. I would have really loved it. I'm going to try and get her back as we talk. But Kelly, again, you work now for systems, AVI systems. You guys put in mega systems. This is a competition. Are your clients coming to you going, well, that's great, but you know, there's this thing that I just hook up to my PC at home. Are you getting that, or are we talking about a completely different set of clientele?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody thinks that, you know, something like this will be the best solution. I mean, people want to install, you know, Chromecast and stuff into their rooms. It's like certain products are for certain rooms. This is for your house. This is for a couple small appliances, you know, electronics in your house, versus a control system that's controlling, you know, big rooms, big auditoriums, large training facilities and stuff. So I mean, it goes back to the adage of, you know, people think they know what they want, but they don't know what they want. You know what I mean?
Well, let me put this to you, Shannon. This is not your wheelhouse, but you are basically.
It used to be.
Well, I'm sorry, it used to be. Okay, you know what? I did know that, and I completely forgot about that. But okay, so it was your wheelhouse. This, and I'm going to bring up as well while you're talking the little wrist controller that they're talking about, and they were marketing this wrist controller to whom? They were marketing it to people like the elderly. So there's a real push here to saying, all right, you young Turks, you get it, you have the technology, you're going to hack it and all that other stuff. But are we really talking automation here, or are these just adjuncts? Is there a real threat, or will these always be just tertiary products?
I think that there's, you know, that there should be a sharper image for each variety of life. You know, if you have your sharper image for elderly, you know, that could be an interesting market idea. You know, I think all of this stuff is moving towards the Dick Tracy reality, or the Star Trek reality, right? We're just trying to have devices which better our lives and are easy to use and are make for a more connected and you know, a better end user experience. Now I worked within Philips Research on lighting control systems, and all about lighting control systems that react to your mood and change the ambient experience when you walked in the room. And we were doing stuff with RFID and other types of tagging systems, so that when I walked in the room and I laid down my keys, the room would change the color that I wanted it to, and it would start playing the music that I liked, and the television would bring up the news items of my RSS feed that I needed to see. You know, all of that type of home automation is stuff that a lot of these big corporations have been trying to think of ways to engage their audience and attract consumers and make life easier. And I think that something like that wristband is a great example, because they are marketing towards people that actually do need these devices. You know, I think about the people who I know who are using iPhones who are disabled. That, you know, they're using either the speech functions or some of the touch aspects. You know, I have a friend who's quadriplegic, and he has an iPhone and has an iPad, and he's actually able to communicate and use those tools to be able to direct theater shows. And it's quite profound, what technology can do for people who need those types of development.
Yeah, I mean, and I see that point, and I do, and I'm just curious that a lot of the wires and Engadgets, and I want to call them the prosumer trade press, really see this as, this is it. It's the way for the future, and everybody who's going to have a democratic home automation. We're going to all be the Jetsons, as I guess that even that Engadget article was talking about. And yet then we come to something a little bit more different. Just when we think we're going to have, don't have to have my cable company, there's a technology out there that lets me do something, we get mixed up with, and I'm going to share this with you, Aereo gets their hands slapped. So Aereo, if you don't know, was a version of streaming in which you could have a small micro antennas, they called them, and you would subscribe and or rent these antennas at a remote location, and they would then stream that content for you and sometimes even DVR it. Recent Supreme Court ruled against them, saying that they are just like a cable company, even though they're not adding any ads or any other revenue content to the stream, that even though they're getting it off air, which is supposed to be the free version, that they are really a cable company and must pony up mega money. I personally see this as a real bad thing for innovation, and that it's going to be detrimental to the consumer's right to choose. Now, Corey, there are some other, as this article is showing, others are saying fine, they're saying no, but we can do it like this, and there is actually an out and an industry that will allow this, despite the protests of the cable companies and the broadcasters, yes?
I really think this is something bad for technology. And the statements are interesting, them saying your favorite service is going away. Here's an idea that isn't. Okay, and that's a great statement by Mark Ely. Then he goes on to say that then another gentleman comes on to say television is a castle filled with money, and people are trying to get into the castle and take some money. What this harms is innovation, okay, because now the Supreme Court steps in and says, well, okay, this is not going to happen. And they're going to say, well, innovation's going to continue, okay? And I like it. I really do. Because nobody is going to go gently into the night with any of this. And they're certainly not going gently into the night. 2-year legal battle with broadcasters and all of that, these things just seem to be becoming legal battles, spotlight grabbing, whatever you want to call it. And you know what? I just, again, I use the word innovation. It's a word I use often. And stifling innovation to me, which is, I believe, what this is discussing, is just such a bad thing for the technology industry. And actually can set it back in numerous ways. The big companies are innovating and all of that. So, this, I disagree. I really do.
Well, you disagree with the ruling?
Yes,
yeah.
I do.
Yeah. Shannon, it's a little different over there in the UK. There is more of a monopoly, actually, or was for a number of years with Sky TV, am I correct, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you have options like this, or is it completely different?
I think that the major broadcasters here have done a pretty good job of trying to integrate with internet services in a better way than I've seen in the U.S. I mean, in the U.S., certainly the major channels will stream their own content, but here in the U.K., basically you have a full DVR option available for every channel as an app that you can get access to almost all of the Freeview, and they do provide essentially a competitor to cable, which is completely free to air. There's over 200 channels that are free to air in the UK. And so as opposed to the handful of local channels, the NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, PBS option, which is basically the major Freeview broadcast set, where everything else is all packaged into cable production that you have in the US. Here, I think there's a broader set of that, and actually pay for Sky cable and whatnot is just does not offer a huge amount of value, except for maybe adding on sports packages or movie channels and the like. And really, in here, and the thing I'm finding as a consumer of media is that I've dropped having a landline. I only have a cell phone. I've dropped having a cable TV bill. I just have an internet connection, and basically, I get all of my media via streaming devices, whether it's Netflix or that. In fact, we don't even have our television free to view cable options anymore, because if I want to watch a show, I'll pull it up on my phone and I'll push it to my Apple TV. You know, I think the way that people are consuming media has changed. The way that people are interacting with things is just dramatically different. And while the area ruling, you know, is a setback for the consumer and for this company and other technology providers, the reality is that people are going to get their media however they choose. And whether it's peer-to-peer file sharing or workarounds or Napster, you know, we keep seeing these things come up where people circumnavigate to be able to get access to the media that they want. And, you know, as an expatriate American living overseas, I can also tell you that a lot of expats that I know, the only way that they can get their American television shows is illegally. They can't get it any other way, because you can't get all the shows that you want to, because they won't stream those shows overseas. They're blocked off. So, you know, I think there's some interesting, you know, interesting things about how this Supreme Court ruling will affect how companies are doing things. But the reality is that consumers will continue to circumnavigate the law in the gray areas until it's better defined.
So the consumers will find what they want despite any efforts to stop them. I see your point there. And I forgot that you were next, Pat. Here I am expecting the British accent to draw in some viewers so that we have that, because they don't need to listen to me all the time.
Sorry, I'm from Colorado.
You had one job, Shannon, one job. All right, well, listen. Now, to that end, and something that's in Corey's wheelhouse, Corey, unified communications. This is from our friends at eWeek. The Mobility Cloud Video holds keys to the future of unified communications. Offline, I guess in the green room, as we'd like to say, before the show started, you and I were talking about how this actually does relate to the Aereo and other types of streaming cloud-based systems. Mm-hmm. First, I know you have an opinion on the whole Supreme Court ruling on this, and tie that into me for cloud communication on how it will or will not be affected by these kinds of same limitations.
You know, I have a feeling it probably will become a target. I'm not sure, you know, how deep to dig on it right now. But listen, if all of that is becoming a target, of course this market is going to become a target as well. But it's growing into a very strong market at this point. You know, I'll use the word disruptive. Okay, it's highly disruptive to the industry, to technology, and what have you. And I'll even tell you, BYOD as well. A lot of solutions work in the cloud. You know, so the cloud is even migrating to that. So where you have mobility and all of that, you know, you have cloud becomes in essence a component of everything, and you know it's out there, it's broad scale and everything else. So I think where you talk about unified communications, and as it says, and this article is actually from back in April of 2013, but it's highly relevant now. You know, mobility cloud video holds keys to future of, like, no, it's not the future of anymore, it's now. Okay, you're seeing a lot of these cloud video conferencing solutions, you know, mobility video are key to them in comparison to hardware and everything else. Some companies are actually going to the cloud now, where before they were hardware only, and they're seeing this. You know, they're seeing where mobility and video and cloud is bringing all of this, the interoperability and all of that. And I don't want to step too far outside of your question, but if we are focused on unified communications, the market's there. You know, it's here. It's liked. You know, Gartner, Forrester recognized the market. I think with that makes it more powerful. It's global at this point. It can't be stopped as far as I'm concerned. And anything that comes into it, even though they may become targets, you know, there's cloud-based video, there's cloud-based streaming. It's not going to go away and it's not going to slow down. So, in terms of unified communications, be it video conferencing, telephony, and all the components of it, Link is a good example. It's growing by leaps and bounds, and it's getting stronger. So I don't see it taking the hit like an Aereo would take or anything like that. So that's really my take on UC and where it is and where it's going. It's going to go a lot further at this point. So that's good.
Yeah. And I have something for you guys. I know we don't want to beat this to death, but my associate Tim Albright, who's supposed to be on vacation, dude, come on. You better be in Bermuda shorts and an open T-shirt. That's all I'm saying to you, buddy. All right. He just sent me a link that Dave Labuscus from the Infocom blog just chimed in on the Booth Babe thing. I'll share this here. It is at the blog infocomblog.org. All voices. He has shared. Let me find it here. The sharing doesn't want to go. Here we go. An exceptional experience was had by all? ? Basically, as you were talking, I was reading through this real quick. So, Dave, if I miss, Mr. Labuscus, if I miss anything, please forgive me. But essentially what it's saying is, yeah, we don't like it either, but we can't impose it. And I have to say that I think none of us were saying that Infocom, the organization, was responsible and or advocating any of this either way at some point, because they don't really have control over some of that. I mean, they have, I guess, general morality laws and things they have to follow as well, but he seems to have just chimed in on this, and it seems, as you said, Corey and Kelly, that that's the groundswell that stopped. They don't like it. They can't stop it. We want everyone to be free and open, but here it is. I am surmising this very quickly after a 2-minute read, not even, on it. But there you go, chiming in on the controversy. All of us saying, is this going to be over and over and nothing happens? I don't know. Kelly, maybe there's something happening?
Yeah, I mean...
Wait and see. Yeah, if it happens, it happens, but you're not holding your breath. I get you. All right, so let's move on to one of our final articles here. I'm sorry, that one moved me on. Come on. Oh, it doesn't want to come in. All right, let's talk about something on this thing with disruption and some other stuff going on. I don't know if anyone saw this, but Microsoft has long been on its Patch Tuesdays. Every one of us that uses a Microsoft PC knows that Tuesday you get the inevitable emails, a little pop-up, urgent things to do. They're now suspending the announcements of the Patch Tuesdays. Now this, I think, has a lot to do with what we're talking about in disruption, in that we talked about unified communications, everything coming to us within the cloud or through the specific channels. And in fact, an old-timer like me saying it's the old push technology that we originally talked about in the early 90s, rather than the retrieving that we were sucked into with Facebook and other social media stuff, which then became push. To that end, though, Shannon, I'll ask you about this, and I don't know how much of an opinion you have or not, but are we being a little overblown? Is Microsoft saying they're stopping it because of, what is it? I'm sorry, I have to read it here. There's some notifications and subscription issues. RSS feeds being blamed on governmental policies. Is this a strike at the European Union?
I think that's quite likely. I mean, there's been a lot of resistance here with just generally with how communications and things are being handled. And I think the EU, UK, the policies that are being set here will have some impact back to US-based manufacturers. It has to. And it's interesting, though. I mean, while this Patch Tuesdays and that email, I mean, we're getting so much stuff, auto updates for most of these things anyway at this point, where a lot of this information is just pushed out through their own. If you have a PC, you're going to get the software patch regardless of whether you really want it or not. It's going to pop up at the bottom of your window because you're connected to the internet all the time. And so, in some ways, I wonder if it's also about eliminating some redundant communication. And maybe the automation of some of these types of announcements and the pushing out of software patches and things. As you said, the push is better than the pull in some ways, and I'm wondering if that's going away with things like Windows XP. How do we move forward in a more connected way so that this stuff, if I need a security patch or I need to have a new virus definition to protect my computer from adware, then it should come to me as quickly as without me even needing to know that it needs to come in some ways. And maybe I'm too trusting in Microsoft's ability to help that. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to not have to go to a website to find out that I need a security patch. That's my thing.
We're sort of riding up on our end of time here. It's about 11:28:29 Eastern Coast time. But I want to bring this up real quickly that the EU also passed a couple of months ago the ability to be forgotten law with Google. And I see this dovetailing in, and I'll ask everyone for their short, if you could, opinions on this if you know about it. You're basically saying that you can petition Google and other search engines, but particularly Google, to say, I don't want that article coming up in searches. It's detrimental to my business, whatever, and all they have to do is say, I don't want it. They don't really need to give any evidence. And there was one with a banker that was I think, accused and/or convicted of doing insider trading, and he's getting it taken off. Is this sort of the same thing? And I sort of guess I want your quick opinions on, do we really want things to be forgotten? Is that a good thing or not? And if I'm an AV business, just like Infocom was talking about Apex, if you know about the Apex program, about the sort of qualification, certification, although Betsy doesn't want me to call it certification, the program about everybody having their businesses on the up and up and following that methodology, could I just ask to have them erased? Is that a good thing? I'll start with you, Shannon.
I mean, yeah, it's been a really hot topic here for sure. I think that the goal is for people to be able to take down certainly the discriminating evidence against them potentially. I mean, I think things that are in the public record and things like news reports and things, those are things that you're just not going to be able to erase. But whether it's I don't know. I think there's still got to be legal process and things, and it's going to be interesting to see how that is challenged going forward. I can imagine that there will be legal process in which somebody will try to eliminate some story about themselves off of Google, but somebody else will have a legal challenge that says, well, actually, you can't take that down because it's part of the public record. Lots been made of what the Great Firewall and how Google's had to deal with China and deal with the publishing of state records and things. And so I think that if individuals can remove things about themselves, the first time somebody who's been accused of is being dealt with for being accused of terrorism or something along those lines in the EU, that will become less of an issue because it's just not going to stand up. Google is public information. You have to see it that way.
Well, here's what I asked, and Kelly, I'm going to put this to you because your main focus is marketing and such. Are we really looking at somebody just amplifying the Streisand effect?
I think it's kind of awesome. I'll be honest. I mean, I think there's a certain fear amongst people, especially people who post stuff online, and it's like it's going to be there forever. In this box somewhere, the information we put up online is never going away. It's going to be around for eternity. Blah blah blah. And it's, I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know a lot about. I don't know a lot about the article and what's going on with it, but it kind of gives me hope that, if you want to take something down, it's not going to be in that big cloud in the sky for the rest of our lives, But that's my personal take, I guess.
All right, cool. And Corey, quick, do you have any thoughts on that? Is it the Streisand effect? Does it really matter to our business at this juncture?
Yeah, well, I'm not familiar with the Streisand effect, but what I will say...
The Streisand effect is she didn't want anybody covering her wedding and implored people to stay away, and of course that meant that everybody and people who weren't going to pay attention paid attention.
Yeah, I think they came. I think they came in helicopters and all of that, but
yes.
But yeah, here's the way I see it. And honestly, for myself, if somebody posts something and puts something inflaming and derogatory, which honestly, for the most part, I don't care in most situations. But for some, you better believe they want to take it down, and they can lobby Google, as a matter of fact, I guess, to do it. But do we take it to the point of online censorship, which is also the way I would call it, because it's up there, it's online. It's, for people to see and whatever. Now, is it being censored in terms of, well, take it down? Can it go further than that at that point to, further effects? So I see two sides of the coin to the whole thing, and I'd say, sure, you can have the right, but you know what? Then it kind of might spiral further than that, and now it's leading to, a worse situation. So honestly, I don't agree with it as a practice, but I'd say there may be some instances where it might be a necessity.
All right. Well, there you go. So as a final bit of business, and I want to thank everyone, but first of all, if you were at Infocom or you were watching Infocom stuff or you were paying attention to any of the feeds, you know well that there was something called the AV selfie going on during that. This was a production of Chris Netto and a few others from Red Band. Was it Phil Cordell Hi-Fi did a video and a song parody of the Chainsmokers song Selfie. You guys took, I think it was over 2,500 photos or something of that nature. I'm sure that Chris will tweet me in a little while after the delay on this saying, hey, it was this many. It was actually bigger. We enjoyed a lot of it. It was a great time. Part of that award was, who's taking the most selfies, who's got the best one going, and there was an award of a projector. And that projector, I'm going to find his name, forgive me, because there it is, sorry, was Chuck Espinoza, right? He tweeted a number, and there he is, of course, selfieing with Mr. Labuscus, who we mentioned earlier. Chuck won a projector. He won, I believe, I'm going to have to add that later, because I don't remember which projector it was. Poor me for doing that. But he is donating that, I believe, to some of the Infocom, for some of the teachers to use and instructors. So that was very good by his part. So very good, Chuck. You had way too much free time on your hands if you ask me, but there you go.
That's awesome.
That is awesome, and it was a lot of fun, that thing. That was a lot of fun. Well, we've run into another hour of AV Week, as the boys on Click and Clack on Public Radio say. You've wasted another good hour. But thank you for watching with us. Today joining us, of course, was Victoria Ferrari. She happened to drop off network issues. I want to thank her for her opinions. I'm sorry we didn't get more of them today. Also joining us was Shannon Harvey, Aspect Unlimited. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Also joining us is Corey Moss. He is the CEO of DC Smart AVIT and a prodigious writer on several blogs, including Rave. It was a Proxima projector, by the way. Everybody's telling me it's a Proxima. Thank you. And I'm being told it was 2,150 posts. So I was off by 100. Thank you. That's what you get when you get last-minute information. This is breaking news. Also joining us, of course, is Kelly Perkins. She is from AVI Systems as well as from the AV Social Show. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I want to let you know that this show and many others on AV Nation are brought to you by Middle Atlantic, our sponsor. AV Nation is brought to you by Middle Atlantic Products and their TechPed technology. Middle Atlantic Products, what great systems are built on. Thank you so much, Middle Atlantic. This has been another edition of AV Week, a production of AV Nation, where you'll find this and other specific shows on the AV technology, from Pico Projection, live sound and entertainment shows, AV Social, as we mentioned earlier, Ed Tech for higher education technology, the AV App Show, our weekly show on applications for just the AV industry with Hi-Fi, who you saw earlier, and Matt Scott. He was the other guy in the towel in that video. So please do come by, join us, see what you think, and give us some of your opinions. This has been AV.